And it's my real pleasure as we open this morning to introduce our first speaker, my dear long-time friend, Joe Riley. Joe and I, everybody thinks we're kin. They think I'm his son. That is not right. Anyhow, we're very, very close, but not blood kin. We might be blood kin. His family grew up about the same place mine did. So our fathers were great friends, and they used to try to get up kin. But anyhow, Joe is a great friend of mine and has been forever. He doesn't really need an introduction. You all know that. He is what they say, a legend in his own time. One of the longest-serving mayors in the United States, the longest-serving mayor ever in Charleston. He retired in January, as you know, after some 40 years as mayor. Joe and I served in the legislature together a long time. There's a number of people here that were around during that time in the legislature, 60s and 70s. In 1975, at the age of 32 then, he decided to run for mayor of Charleston, his beloved city. He was born there and he was raised there. He was a passionate bridge builder, has always been, always working full-time to close the racial divide that laid bare the whole deal following the civil rights movement, and he has been such a leader in that area and the state also. He won. He acted immediately. For the first time, African Americans were included in the city's executive administration. He appointed Charleston's first black police chief. I think he's a DLI member. He provided affordable housing for blacks and other low-income citizens, often in places where others told him it would be impossible, but he kept on and on and on. He spearheaded the revitalization and the transformation of Charleston into a vibrant, livable city, and the top cultural distinction it is today. Charleston is special. We all know that. Charleston Place, Spoleto, Waterfront, Aquarium, the whole deal. He has provided strong, effective, and compassionate leadership through the devastating human tragedy that has taken place in Charleston, the various property destruction and so forth. And we all are so proud of the tremendous leadership he provided in the tragic murders in Charleston. He and Governor Haley were recognized in the Riley Institute Wilkins Dinner earlier this year for their civic leadership during 2015. Joe's impact is evidenced by the many awards he's received. I won't go into all those. Outstanding Mayor Award of the National Urban Coalition. He's really considered an urban design guru, really nationally known, recognized for what all he's done in turning Charleston into the lovely city it is today. But the list goes on of his accomplishments, very important to us here as we talk about OneSouthCarolina, the Verna Award for the South Carolina, from the South Carolina Arts Commission. Folks are here. The Order of the Palmetto, the South Carolinian of the Year, and so forth. But interestingly enough, with regard to our conference theme and today's session, each of these awards was predicated in large part on Joe Riley's record of strong investment in Charleston's infrastructure and his tireless effort to improve the quality of life for all. Their opportunity infrastructure, their physical infrastructure, all of that has been part of what Joe's leadership has been about. He is passionate about the way Charleston looks and feels. And at the same time, he always has challenged himself and his staff to think long term. And he is thinking out front. He's a visionary leader. I'll tell you this, this forward-looking vision of his has made Charleston the wonderful city it is, and it has impacted all of South Carolina, and he has a great national reputation. And today, he continues his relentless pursuit to bring to reality the International African American Museum at Gadsden's Wharf in Charleston, something that he's absolutely been committed to for a long time and worked very hard and determined to see it done in the right way. Joe's going to fill us in some on this project, which is now more than a decade in the making, and it will be a great source of pride to all of us, all of One South Carolina. I want to welcome my dear friend, Mayor Joe Riley. Joe?
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much. I'm so proud of my boy. He's, and my dear friend, you know, this is so wonderful, and I know my time allotted is very short, but it's just so wonderful after the extraordinary careers of best legislator, most remarkable governor, secretary of education, that his service continues, just as robust, just as inventive as always, and his initiatives here and through the Riley Center and the important challenge to all of us to support and enhance the diversity and fairness in our state. It's really just remarkable, and I'm so happy to be here this morning. Got up at 5 o'clock to get here. I've got to get right back, but this was such an important opportunity. I was fortunate to be in elected public office for 46 years, and I will always want to be serving as a private citizen, but this, which you will just see, is the most important work of my life. The creation of this museum of all the things that I've worked on, this is one that will not only benefit our region and our state, but the country and indeed the world. So with that, they'll quickly turn on this video, and then I'll say a few words at the conclusion. Thank you.
Over the course of 3 centuries, more than 4 million people were forcibly taken from their homelands across the continent of Africa to become the human fuel driving a booming economic engine in the New World.
West Africa and other outlying areas became a place where you can get cheap labor. And the slave trade became a boom. It became a world changer.
And that went on for 300 years as Africa, the continent of Africa, became an endless supply of human cargo.
After weeks or months at sea in nightmare conditions, the enslaved Africans that survived the journey arrived at quarantine sites in the New World. From there, almost half of all enslaved Africans took their first unimaginable steps of slavery across the boards of Gadsden's Wharf on the Charleston waterfront, where they were sold as property.
48.1% of all of the African slaves that came to the United States entered this country through Charleston. So blackness, black culture, the African experience, the African American experience, slavery, however you want to slice it, this is ground zero.
From this epicenter of history, On this hallowed ground will now stand a museum of connection, of education, and remembrance of one of the most significant events of human migration the world has ever known.
I am Barbados.
I am Senegal.
I am Togo.
I am an American.
The IAAM is a new museum of African American history and identity. The IAAM experience will communicate the largely overlooked history of African Americans in the Low Country, in South Carolina, and the nation, to explain how this population is indelibly woven into the fabric of the complete American story.
In my view, one of the greatest casualties of the period of enslavement is the fact that the Africans who were brought here and sort of current day African Americans, our history, our sense of history, understanding where we came from, what our culture was, what our language was, that was all whitewashed away. So to have a museum on the spot where enslaved people came through just helps to frame the African American experience in this country in a way that I believe will be just extraordinarily uplifting.
I believe that we now have a larger group of individuals in South Carolina and in the world that recognize what happens when a whole group of people are overlooked.
And so we necessarily have to understand the story that unfolded here as ultimately an American story.
It is estimated that as many as 80% of African Americans today can trace an ancestor that came ashore in Charleston. This makes the location of the museum on the city waterfront pivotal to the legacy of the IAAM.
It was important that that history be presented in this city, which is profoundly important in the history of African Americans, and also so important for us to honor those who were brought here in chains in the bottom ships, who they and their families helped build this community and build our country.
I think it's very important that a great city in the South be the home of a great museum celebrating the achievements, the history, and the culture of persons of African descent. And I can think of no place more ideal, no place more perfect, no place more appropriate than Charleston.
I absolutely believe this will be one of the most important sites, museums, memorials in the entire country because of the intersection of history, of location. I think about Ellis Island, and I have friends whose families came through there, and I've seen, just what that means to them. And I've always felt a little, disconnected from that because I don't have any history there. Well, here's the opportunity for people of African American descent to have that kind of a connection.
We're always aware, if we choose to be, of the ghosts and echoes of an almost inexpressibly wise past. And the knowledge that this new museum will be situated over a wharf that brought in so many African slaves is such an amazingly powerful thing. You can go there and stand and feel not just the present moment, but all the moments that went before. It might be possible to imagine this, and in imagining it, we open up our hearts and our minds to new possibilities.
Not only a site of memorial and remembrance, the International African American Museum will be an unprecedented center of education and research. The IAAM is poised to host a significant national database feeding a hands-on family history and heritage lab. In addition, the museum will partner with local and national schools to provide rich educational experiences.
This is a gateway. Today we are looking back and we are seeing what occurred. We are assessing what transpired. We are seeing what vestiges still remain.
I believe that the International African American Museum it's critical to have a understanding and awareness and appreciation for the sacrifice, for the life, the legacy, and history that African Americans played in the building and shaping not only of this community, the state, this nation, but this hemisphere.
It is going to be a hybrid space, a place of memorialization, a place of remembrance, as well as a place of learning.
When you go to the continent of Africa, to West African countries, you see the doors, the windows of no return, and there is a conversation, a dialogue about what that means. To complete the dialogue, there needs to be on this side a window, something looking back to complete the circular narrative of the importance of the slave trade.
It's the Ellis Island without a welcoming Statue of Liberty. And I think what the museum does is say, let's learn our history. We can both feel the stultifying prison that slavery obviously is, and at the same time be uplifted knowing that we have appealed to the better angels of our nature.
Join us in this opportunity to build an institution on a sacred site will help Americans understand who we are and enable us to together build a more unified future.
I am Ghana. I am Liberia.
I am Angola.
I am an American.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Well, you're very kind. Thank you. On June the 17th, a hateful bigot went into that Bible study class and killed those prayerful, lovely people because they were black. He was bigoted. He thought he could start a race war. And I profoundly believe that if that man in the 5th grade is a part of his American history study, not just doing Black History Month, American history study, if when he learned about the Mayflower or the Western migration or whatever, if he had learned this history and understood the harshness and the sacrifices and the achievement, I don't believe he could have had that hate in his heart. And that's why this museum is so important. This is a national thing, has been said. It's here, it's in Charleston because it should be, as Ellis Island is there in a different way. And so we will help, for the first time, I think, our country tell this full story. We are all Americans. My people came from Ireland, and some of my people came from Germany. Well, some of our citizens, people came from one part of Africa, another part of Africa. We're all citizens together. We're all part of the wonderful, rich fabric of our country. And so we will, in this museum, we will be developing curriculum, working with the Superintendent of Education in South Carolina, and we believe it will go national, but coming from that source to get this history out so it's a standard part of understanding who we are as America. And I believe such an important step forward to achieve the racial progress and embracing of the wonderful diversity that we have in America. So I come here this morning to ask you to help. And we want to begin construction by this time next year, $75 million project. Essentially, we've got about $21 million to raise. With states continuing to put their share in, and I'm confident of that. So I ask you, everyone here, to help. I ask everyone here to contribute. To go online, IIAM Museum, but you're connected with every part of South Carolina. So if there's a company you work for, a foundation you're connected with, then ask them to contribute or get them to get in touch with me. And we're going by the numbers. We're meeting with corporation foundations here and around the country, and I've been working hard on this, and I'm dedicating my life to it. But we need your help, because we can't just talk about this. We got to do it. And so it's a 501c3. The contributions, of course, are charitable donations. But spread the word. That's what I really believe, and I was happy to get up at 5 o'clock this morning to come here. I got to run it back, because I know the power in this room, the goodness in this room, and the power in this room to help us light that fire in our state that will get these funds raised, and then let us build. This will be, I don't think there'll be a more important building in South Carolina. And, you know, it's wonderful when we build things for ourselves, but when we build something for others, we build something in South Carolina that could only be here for America, and indeed for the world. What a huge achievement it will be for all of us. So thank you for having me. I might say it's an honor to be with my dear friend Ed Randell, a wonderful governor of Pennsylvania, but a wonderful mayor of Philadelphia before that, and one of my elective heroes. Thank you all so very much.